Hey everybody, welcome to Leon's Chainsaw Parts and Repair. We are looking at the beginnings of a mess on my workbench again. There's my motor seal. Okay. We're looking at a Super 2 engine for my friend Bob, and I'm not sure I've ever done a video on this. So what we got going on, I've already taken the piston off. This crankshaft came out of there. You can see there's some damage. This is the style that uses the retainer clip, and Bob was indicating that this was slipping off. The retainer wouldn't hold the sprocket in place because of that damage. So we have got a new to us crankshaft that doesn't have all that damage on it. Now, these bearings are already the good ones. A Torrington, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but that's a true full roller bearing in there. That was considered the heavy duty bearing. So the only thing I'm going to replace on this are the crankshaft seals. But since the one is already missing here, I'm going to need a seal spacer. There we go. So this is really important. When you're putting one of these things together, you've got thrust washers, and you want it to go with the flat side to the crank. Thrust washer, bearing, seal spacer, and then your crankshaft seals. Now this, I don't think is any giant secret to anyone, but the SKF 4913 dead ringer replacement. So don't pay some clown on eBay $15 a seal for the SKF. Somebody who's vending SKF seals, and I think those are $7 or $8 a piece. They're a little more expensive than I'd expect, but still, you are getting a nice fresh seal. So they just slip on. Obviously, you want the garter spring facing inward. So we need to get the piston back on. And just like on any other saw, now this piston isn't, it's interesting, that pin was installed backwards. Like any other Homelite saw, oh no, okay, it's not open on one end. You want your ring landing, or your ring stop pin, to be away from the muffler. So you want that on your flywheel side of the crankshaft. I'm just going to press that in, if I can ever get it lined up. It shouldn't be difficult, but for some reason I'm making it difficult. There it goes. Okay. Now these little snap rings, I'm not going to pretend are the easiest thing to work with, because they are not. So what I like to do is get my thumb over it and try and use a blunt edge. Damn it. And get the end. There it goes. Get the end started down here first, and it'll kind of pull into shape, and you don't end up ripping the side of your piston apart, which nobody wants to do. Okay, so how do these things seal? Well, Homelite from the factory, I'm going to get a paper towel here, used some sort of motor seal, similar to the Moto seal. And that's all they use, no gasket on these things. So consequently, you want everything to be clean. I've cleaned both these halves up with some acetone and let it dry. So you can see where everything rides. This is the bar pad right here. Now, interestingly, this is a good time to look. This has got the diaphragm style oil pump. The port that takes the crankcase pulse up to actuate that is right there. So it's pretty well in the crankcase. There's no risk of getting sealer in there, thankfully. Not like the 450 and 550 where if you went too crazy on the sealer, you could actually block the oil pulse passage, which on those saws is not a good thing. So I'm going to set the piston in here first. You do want a slight coat of the Moto Seal around the bearing and seal there, or actually around the seal. Now, it's not going to affect the clearance on the bearing. If you get a little too much in there, it's going to squirt out, but you don't want it in the engine. So I like to do just a smear on the outer half. I'll probably have to get a little bit more for this side. And really, there's no better way to do this than by hand. So just accept that you're going to get a little dirty doing it. That's okay. So obviously that means you want to wipe, make sure there's no oil on your bearing housings. And this already has a taper to the cylinder. Not a lot of oil in there. I'm going to give it a squirt. So you don't have to use a ring compressor. The taper, as you're leading up to it, will get it in. Make sure that I'll go this way. Then you just slide it down. Now the books call for you to make these little shims to set your side play. And what's the side play? Well, you've got thrust washers. I don't mess around with that. I set it to where it's close, where I think it's close, and then we will test it by grabbing this and pulling from side to side once we've got it assembled. And if it's loosely assembled, and if it's right, we'll go ahead and torque it. If it's not, if it's a little too tight, one of the tricks you can use is to take a ball peen hammer, or not ball peen, dead blow or a rubber mallet, and just tap the crankshaft on either side. That actually is what one of the manuals for the 450 and 550 calls for doing. So for the rest of it, you get a skim coat around here. Do the same thing in the housing there. Nothing magical about this at all. In reality, the seals have that kind of rubber casing that shouldn't need sealant around it, but what the hell. Homelite didn't do stuff for no reason. They had engineers that knew what they were doing. Alright, that's it. Get the cap on this before it makes a bigger goober mess. Come on. That'll it'll just sit in place, but you want to make sure you don't put it down the wrong way. So you want your oil pump on your muffler side. There it goes. Only one way to go. So what we're going to do is put these 4 screws in and just get them loosely tight. We'll try and do the equivalent of a finger tight. As you can see, there's no way in hell you're getting your fingers on a couple of these, especially this one right here. Okay, well, I thought I could do it without needle nose pliers, but that is what I get for thinking. Get in there. Okay. It's just barely tight. Okay. That's actually just about perfect. You want a little side to side. That is perfect. Yep, I'm totally happy with that. You can see little sealant here on the surfaces that didn't get used. You can see we're not tight up here yet. There's a little bit of a gap right there. Go ahead and get this good and tight. But these are a small screw, so don't over tighten them. That should be good. Looks good to me. No headaches about that. Just going to wipe a little bit of the blowout there. Okay. You just resealed a crankcase on a Super 2 or an XL. So, last step. Get the clutch back on here. Now the reality is this will tighten on its own, but I'm not a big fan of that, because if for some reason something happens to where the sprocket comes off, that clutch is going to go flying. So I'm going to go ahead and give this thing just a little bit of a fight. Now it's important when you're tightening one of these to make sure your tool is not pushing out on the shoes. You got to make sure that it's pushing against the center hub, because you can break those S clutches, and that is not something you want to do. They're not super expensive, and you can still find them for the most part, but again, you don't want to waste money. Here, now I can see some marks on this crankshaft from where the old bearing rusted, so I'm going to run that across the wire wheel and take that off. And then we're going to give it just a little thing of axle grease. Let's see where to. That'll make it the most effective. Okay. So what you don't want to do is get a bunch of grease in the clutch housing to where it's going to get all over the clutch. If you can get it in there, slip it on. That's what you're looking for. Doesn't take a huge amount, just a little. And then if you still have the old snap ring that doesn't have the eyelets, throw that sumbitch as far as you can and get one that has eyelets. That was one of Homelite's worst ideas. And boom. There you go. that is how you assemble crankcase and basically engine on a Super Tuber XL.